Okay, so last time we talked about um, some of the operations for the files. Uh, we talked about the couple of operations we just mentioned. Let's just check out. So so the first operations is to create a file and then to destroy a file. These are basically um, two actually operations that always comes in pair. Uh, so you can create and then you can destroy. Once you actually create the file, you can open the file. Okay. So now when you do the read, write, or seek to a position, you have to do this operation while the file is open. So open file is very important operation. So you have to open before you can do anything else. Okay. So so we talk about create a file. So basically, in the operating system file system, um, so there is a file directory, which is actually a special file which contains um, the information about other files. So file directory is actually a directory. Directory is a special file, but this file does not contain any specific material. It just contains the generic all the information about the files stored in the hard disk. Okay, so the file directory is just like a list of data. Um, each each item contains the file name and also a pointer. So this is the file name and a pointer. So this pointer is the reference. It's a memory address. Okay. So this is a memory address that points to an object. It's called file control block. So this is a typical way for the operating system to manage anything. Uh, for processes, there's a process control block, and for file, there's a file control block. Now, the file control block contains a lot of informations. Okay, so it may contains the length of the file, how 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 big the file is going to be. Okay, and then they also contains the reference. Okay, block 0, block 1, because every actually computer file going to be stored block by block. Okay, so in any hard drive space, the file going to be stored as a block, another block. So the blocks are of the same size. So for example, each block may contains like 512 bytes. Okay, so that's the block size. So if you have a file like any size, like for example, if you have a let's say I have a 1 megabyte. Okay, I have a file of 1 megabyte. So 1 megabyte is 1024 kilobyte, right? And the 1000 kilobyte is 1020. Oh no, sorry, not 1024 kilobytes, 1 megabyte. So that's actually 2 to the 10. Okay. So this is always the case for the computer system. Every file size is going to be actually always like a power of 2. So then kilobytes, 1 kilobyte is 1024 bytes. So 1 megabyte is 1024 times 1024 bytes. So if you have 1 megabyte file, then how many blocks do we need to store the file? how many blocks? So that's the size. If the block size is 512 bytes, so that's the block size, and this is the file. That's the size of the file. So then, how many blocks do we need? Divided by 12, right? So that's 2048 blocks. So if for 1 megabyte, you need 2048 blocks if the block size is 512 bytes. Does it make sense? Okay. Now, if I don't hear any response, then I assume that it makes sense. Okay. Unless you actually say anything, you know. So the file actually control block basically contains all the information. Now, each block basically points to the actual location in the hard disk. Okay. So block 0, 1, 2. So in that case, you have a block 0 all the way to block 2047. Okay, so that's the last one. So to create the file, they first actually search the file directory, and to make sure the file name does not match any existing file. If the file name matches any existing file, then you're gonna give you one message say, okay, you tried to create a file which is already there. So do you want to override or whatever? Okay. Now, once they find out that the file name does not match any of the existing file, then they're going to allocate a free space in the file directory and put the file name there and create a file control block, and then based on the address, the location, and put the reference over here. So, and this is going to point to the file control block. So this way, you basically create the file. And initially, once the FCB is created, now each block going to point to now. That does not point to anything. Okay. Now, when a file has been written into, so initially all the blocks going to actually point to nothing. Okay. So until you basically write some data into the file. So every time when you write the data into the file, so you first actually allocate the block and write the data into the block and point each of the block to the actual location where the data is stored. Okay, so that's basically the create file. Now, destroy the file is basically the opposite. Okay, so you first need to actually destroy you're going to release the file disk block. So that means this disk block is not pointed to by this file control block. So that means it's free. Okay, so other people can actually use these block space. And then you disconnect the file control block. So then delete the file name. So it's just the actually opposite direction. Okay. So I may not actually talk about all the operations. So I may pick some of the operation. I think open a file, it's a very important operation. So we're going to talk a little bit about the open file. So basically, in order to read, okay, or write, or seek, you do the searching for a data. So before you do this operation, you have to open a file. Now, open file operation prepare a file for efficient access and manipulate by retrieving relative file information from the file control block. So remember, so when you try to open a file, make sure that the file is already created. So that means in the file directory, there's a file name also pointed to the file control block. So these are already there. So make sure these are already there. Then you can open you have to open the existing file. You cannot open a file which hasn't been created yet. So you cannot do that. Okay. So it's these, make sure these are already here. So FCB, and then probably the FCB already pointed to some blocks. Okay, like this. So the data is already here. Okay. So this is actually kind of situation. So the file is created. So now you want to open the file. Okay. Now, how can I tell a file is open or not? Because all the file has been created. So then in operating system, file system, FS, they actually have a dedicated table called open file table. Okay. Open file table could be empty. That means there's no file has been opened at this moment. Now, if a file is open, then so that file should be, information of the file should be stored in the open file table, OPT. Okay. So once the file information is located in OPT, so that means this file is currently open. And then you can actually perform some manipulate the file like a read, write, seek using the OPT. Okay. Now here's something you need to know about the OPT. The OPT actually contains, is a data structure. It keeps track of the all file currently in use. Okay. So the OPT file is a table. Each line corresponding to a file, open a file. Okay. So there's an index 0, 1, 2, 3. That's the index. So for every open file, when you try to access the file, you have to know the index. What is the index of this file? Okay. If one of the open files is index 1, then you just need to specify the index. Say, I want to read a file, data from a file, and then the reader command should specify the index. Okay. So when a process wants to open a file, access the file, and perform some operation, now first thing you need to do is check the permit, whether this process is is allowed to access the file. Okay. Now that permit information is also stored in the file control block. Okay. There's something called protection information. Okay. So the file control block contains a lot of information. Some of the information are not listed here. Okay. So that means if a process wants to access the file, check the file, and then the file system going to check the protection information to see whether this process has the permit to access the file. Okay. And then if this is okay, so the process is allowed to open the file, then you're going to actually access the file. You're going to find and allocate the free entry in the OPT or I'm sorry. It's OFT, not OPT. Sorry, OFT. Okay. So find and allocate the free entry in the OFT, and then allocate read or write buffer as necessary for given type of file. Okay. Now this is how you're going to operate the OFT. Let's actually check the example to see what the OFT going to look like. Okay. Now this is an OFT. So this is the index. Okay. So to open a file ABC, a file name called ABC. So then, um, so you need the file system going to search the directory, and then find the ABC, right? Okay. So that's the file I want to open. Okay. Um, so the FS search the directory for the match. Now, if there's a match, say, oh, file ABC, the file name ABC has been found. Okay. Then the entry point, also the reference point to the FCB is actually located. So now you got the FCB. Okay. And then you check, you know, among the other attribute, FCB contains a list of disk blocks. Okay. There's a whole bunch of blocks, and also the actual location for the contents of the file. And then one important information is the protection information. Okay. So using the protection information, the FS verified that the process, okay, you find the ABC, okay, and you also find the FCB, and then I'm gonna check whether you have permit to access to open the file. Okay. If that information has passed, okay, then the file system gonna actually find a, you know, free space, verify the process has necessary access right. Then the FS allocate a free OFT entry. Okay, I found this. Okay, I found this location. Okay, so then, okay, so I find a OFT location. So now, so next thing you need to do is the file system gonna do a couple of things. First, set the position to 0 in the OFT. So that means you open the file, and once the file is open, now the current position is 0. So that means it's pointing to the beginning of the file. And then the length of the file is copied here. Okay. And then that's the protection information. Okay. Protection information. So this every time when another process want to write or read, they check the protection information because it's open. So some of the FCB information will be copied to the OFT. Okay, open file table. So this information will be copied. And also the information of the first block will be copied. So this first block will be copied to here, the read and the write buffer. So that's so if the buffer size is 512 bytes, so then the read and the write buffer is 512 bytes. Okay. Now the block sizes depend on the computer system, the hard disk system. So the newer computer system tends to have a big block size. The older computer system tends to have a small block size because in general, the hard disk size is getting bigger and bigger. So, and also access speed is faster and faster. So the block size tends to be bigger. So let's assume that the block size is 512 bytes. So then the read and the write buffer gonna have 512 bytes. So you can copy the first block into the read and write buffer. Exactly. No, you can copy it. Okay. So this is it. And then this index information, the index information will be returned to the process. Okay. Whatever the process that open the file, whatever the process that open the file. So any process that's open the file, then the index information will be actually, basically returned to the process. So the process has the index information. Okay. So in this case, index is 2. So this index information will be returned to the process. So for whatever the process that open the file. Okay. So this process can have access to these open file. Okay. Now the file is open. Okay. So the process has index information. Okay. Now a process may open couple files. So that means the index of couple files will be kept in this process. Okay. Now next time when the process decides to write information or read the information from this open file, then all the process need to do is refer to the index information. Okay, let's see how it's actually do. So let's see the read information. Okay, so when the open process try to read a file, okay, now the instruction sent to the computer system is read IMN. So I is OFT information index. Okay, open file table index. So if you say read, it's more like a assembly language. Read to. Okay, and also M is the location of a memory in the memory. Okay, so for example, M could be, let's say, um, okay, so that's a memory location. And then N is specified number of bytes to be read. Okay, if the number of bytes to be read is 128, so that's a byte. So that means each read command gonna only read 128 bytes. Okay, so this is actually perfect number, but sometimes it's not. It's this number N could be like 200 bytes, not necessarily like this. Okay, now so once you actually, that means you can read a file at the index location 2. So that means you're going to read a file, read this particular ABC file, because it's actually in the index location 2. Okay. Now, for each read, I can only read 128 bytes. Okay. And that's the memory location the data will be stored. So because when you read the data, you can actually, from the hard disk. So the read command basically going to do is, here's the hard disk space. Okay. And here's the memory. So memory. So now I want to read the data. Okay. So in the memory, so this file information is stored in the index 2, right? In the OFT. And the file information is actually in the OFT. So when I read the information, so that information OFT basically give you the start position at this time is 0, the length, and then the first information. And this file FT also has a reference point to the FCB. I forgot to mention this because eventually there should be a pointer this file OF, this particular file, to the FCB. So you don't need to actually go through the file directory. So you can directly, go to the process, go to the index 2, and then go to the point reference and find out the information of FCB. Okay. Now, if you want to read this information, okay, so here's what you didn't do. Okay. So a file, for example, if you say read so I say read index 2. What is the number? 256 and 128. Okay. So in this case, okay, so that's the memory location. Okay, which is this. Okay. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the index 2, not I, in this particular command. Go to the index 2, and I'm going to read the first 128 bytes. So the total size is, the buffer size is 250, right? Or 512 bytes. So then 128, that's probably over here. That's 128 bytes. So then I can actually copy this 128 bytes over here. Okay. Now, if you actually say general M, so that's the N. So basically, you're gonna read. So you're gonna read actually M bytes. Okay, up to here, and then copy this into the memory location starting from M. That's a size M, right? So starting from N, so this memory location going to be N plus N. So that's the next one because it's N. That's the starting point, and you copy N bytes. So the next location will be M plus N. Okay. So what's the next read command? So after you read, after you say read N, I M N. So what's the next read command? Next read command is going to be still going to be I. So that's the index, same index. And what's the actually start memory location? What's the memory location next? So when you read,
would it be N plus M?
Yeah, N plus N. So that's the next available starting memory location. And then typically the read command is going to always read the same size. N. Okay. Now that's the problem because I personally like to have N just the same size as the block size. So every reader can read just one block. So that would be easy, but not always the case. So the N may not be the same size as a block size. So the N is going to be half of this. And then for the next read, so you're going to read the next N bytes start into the memory location starting from here. Okay. So then you're going to try to read the next N, right? But the problem is because in the buffer, so you have N, so you're going to read this to the end of the buffer. So you only actually get that small information, right? So the next portion going to be in next block, in the next block. So that's why you can actually say once you reach the end of it, okay, then you're going to copy the next block into the read and write buffer, block 1. And then read the remaining portion. Okay. So the next block is going to be this first. This is from the block 0, and this is from block 1. Okay. And then you're going to be here. So now the point in the OFT is here. Okay. So you're going to actually do this. Now, if you read the next, so then you increment m plus n to m plus 2n, 2 times m. And the next one going to be m plus 3n, right? So you're going to continue. Okay. Make sure this pointer is very important. So this basically tells you the current location, okay, in an open file. Okay, when you read, and you basically read start from here, because everything before has already been read, and it's already in the memory, so you don't have to actually copy into the memory again. So that's important. So that's the file system. You basically keep copy the blocks from the actual block into the OFT, the open file table, and then from open OFT to the memory. So you have to go through from the OFT, then OFT to the memory, because OFT need to have an accurate information about the current status of the open file. So that's why you have to go through this. You cannot directly copy from from the block, the actual block into the memory. Then you lost track of it. Okay, so that's something you have to do. Let's read the file. Write file is basically, it's also very similar, but the write file, you assume the file is open, it's empty file, so you want to write. So you basically write from the very beginning. Okay, so the write, it's also just like a read. Okay, so you already open the file, and the file is stored in the index. Okay, OFT index I. Okay, so the file is already there. Okay, and then here's a read and write buffer, and here's a position. It's 0, length, and other information, and then it's point to the FCP. FCB. I'm sorry. So this is how you're gonna, for each write operation. So that's the number of bytes you're gonna write, and that's the memory location you're gonna write this in bytes to. So the memory location. Okay. So when you actually have a write command, it's just like a read command. Okay. Read command is basically copy the data from the hard disk block into the memory. Now the write is the opposite operation. You basically read the data from the memory, copy into the OFT, and then from OFT, you just actually copy into each of the block. Block 0, block 1. So you basically from the memory, copy to the buffer in the OFT, and then from OFT just allocate each of the block. Okay. So it's opposite, So read, you basically copy the data from the hard disk block into the memory, so you can read. Okay, once it's in the memory, so then you can display on the monitor. And then the write is basically, suppose you already create the, all these information of the file information. It's currently in the computer memory, and you want to write to the file. So you want to actually copy these information which is currently in the memory, because you cannot keep the file contents in the memory forever, because memory is a volatile storage. So every time when you turn off the computer system, everything in the memory is gone. So that means you have to actually write the data from the memory, going through the OFT, and then copy to the block, and update the FCB, the file control block. So that's basically what you do. Okay. So here's the thing. So this is a file which is currently in the memory. The starting location is M. So you're going to write the first n byte. Okay. So what you do is, initially, okay, so all the block is basically point to null. So that means it's an empty file. So you can actually, initially it's 0. Okay. So then you can actually copy this n block into the read-write buffer. And then you copy the next one, but you only copy enough to fill up this buffer. Once the buffer is filled, completely full, if it's 512 bytes, right? And then you're going to copy this information of this read and write buffer into the block 0. You copy into the block 0. Okay, so, and then you're going to actually copy the next n block. Okay. So this is actually a little bit tricky, because n is, so you copy, so in order to fill this buffer, you need 2 write operation, right? You need a 2 write operation. Okay. But, so the second write operation only can write small portion to over here, and then copy to it. And then this next portion going to be replace the whole thing and over here. And then the next portion, part of the next portion going to be here. So this is going to be actually a little bit more complicated, because there's a shift over here, because the n at the right only actually write n bytes, which might be smaller than the block size. So you need to keep an eye on this. So the bottom line is, once the read and write buffer is full, then copy to the next block. Okay, find a location in the hard disk, copy this data to this block, and then point to the block information in the FCB to the block. And then you clean it up and fill the read and buffer again. And once it's full, and then copy to the next one. Okay, now block 2. So that's the write file. So I'm gonna skip the. Okay, I don't have to skip the seek position. The seek position is something that the file is already open. You want to actually, find a particular location in the file. Okay. So the seek position, you need to do 2 things. You need to provide once the first is, of course, the index. You need to know the index basically tells you which file you are looking for. Okay. And then the K basically means specify the new position within the file. Okay. The new position within the file. So typically that's the byte information. like you seek index 2, and the byte is 2048. Okay, that's the byte information. Okay. Now, if you are seeking for this information, then what you're going to do is you need to check out the two, let's say 3048. And then 3048, then you first need to check out where is 3048 located, in which block the 3048 is located. Now, how can I find out which block the 3048 is located? Suppose the block size is again 12 bytes. How are you going to find out?
You can use integer division and like divide it by the block size,
right?
and then the result will give you the block that it's in.
Yeah, right, like this, right? So when you divide this, you're going to find out, I think I'm going to put a 5 here. If I put 6, it's going to be more than this number 5. 2 times 5 is 0. 6 times 5, 6, 1, 5, 6, 25. 8, that's 8, 4. Okay, so that means you got a 5 and additional 4, 88. So this is good because the block size is 512, so this is 488. It's smaller than block size. If this is bigger than 512, that means you're gonna actually go into the next block. So what does that mean? So that means you're talking about a block like here. That's block 0, block 1, block 2, block 4, or 3, and block 4, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's from 0 to. So this is from 0 to 512, and that's 24. That's actually 2048. That's double. And a plus 2048 plus 512, 0, 5, 6, 5, 2. So 2, 5, 6, 0. And then 3548 is here, over here, in block number 5. Okay, but does not reach the next one. So what's the end of the next block? So it's a 2560 times plus 2, 512. That's 2, 7, 0, 3. So it's a 3072. Okay, that's the next one. But you're talking about 3048, so it's over here. Okay, so now you find the location of your files, the block 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So then you can figure out this. So for example, if you say, now when you do the seek, you need to know what's the current location. So that's, the position is this, and the current location is pointed to here. It's a 306. Okay, so now you need to figure out, so 1330 is actually in block 2, because 1330 divided by 512 is 2, and then the modular is 306. Okay, so this is actually block 2. So you can basically figure out which block is currently in the buffer, right? By dividing this position by the block size by 12. And this is basically it's a remainder, which is the actually as a result of the modular operation. Now, if you seek for I 1400, and then you're going to do the division again. 1400 divided by 512, and that's the integer division. You got 2. So that means it's still in block 2, but the offset 1400 modular 512 is a 376. So the current position is a 306, and the next position, the position you are seeking is 370. So you don't have to change the block, but just point to the next position. Yeah. Okay. So that's what it is. Okay. So that's the seek command. Now, if the seek command is, say, seek I, like a 500, 5,400. And then you need to do the division, and you find out, oh, this is not in the block 2. It's actually in the block somewhere, down the road in the next block. And then you need to actually change the block. And then you find the offset, and change the block, copy the new block over here, and then reset the offset. Then that's the seek. Okay, seek operation. Now, what is this? Let's see. 4,500 divided by 512. What's that? 1, 512, 8, 20. Okay, so it's in block number 10, right? So you can actually, so block number 10 will be copied to here. And then also the offset is 280. So it's block number 10 and the pointer to 280. So that's the next location. So you basically, when you do the seek position, you basically update the open file table and copy the right block in there and point to the right offset. That's the seek command. And then everything you can actually set all the way back to 0 to the beginning. So that means if you seek the position 0, I 0, then you put the first block over here and point to the 0. Okay. So that's seek a position. Okay, so now next you're going to close the file. Basically, just like create the file, destroy the file, that's the opposite operation. Now open the file and the close file, that's also the opposite operation. So what the close file going to do is, all you need to do is remove all the information and delete the entry in the OFT, the open file table, because that entry should be deleted. Okay. Now, close the file is not the same as destroy the file, because it just actually remove from OFT, right? That means the file is not open anymore, but the file is still there. So you still need to have the directory. The file is still going to be in the file directory, and the file still have the file control block, right? So that information is still there, but it's not open anymore. So that's just, you need to realize, the difference between, create and destroy. And then open and close. So create and destroy, that means that the whole file is wiped out. Okay, so that means you basically use the make file in your Windows operating system, or you can use delete file. You can delete the file. So that means the file is actually completely gone. Now open file basically just saying, okay, you just double click the file and open the file. And then you close the file, you just close it, close the window, and the file is closed. Just need to know that. Okay. Any questions about these file operation? Okay, so this is actually how the file is going to be closed. Okay. So here the file is open because all the information is here, and also the buffer actually contains a certain number depending on what is the current position. That's the information. Also, there's a reference to the FCB. Okay. All you need to do is, the only thing you need to realize before you close the file is, because every information in the open file table should be copied to the file control block. Okay. So every information should be copied to the file control block, because the information in the OFT is the updated information for the file, because if the file has been updated, modified, so the information over here has been modified, but the FCB may not be. So that's why before you close it and disconnect it, you have to actually copy that information to the length. Okay, you have to copy all this information to the FCB before you disconnect it, and then you need to reconnect this file to the FCB. So this file is still over there, but it's disappeared. The item, the index that associated with this open file is disconnected. So this item is free again. So it's not related to the file. So I'm going to skip the details, but just in general, just let you know, when you close the file, you just disengage this OFT with the file control block. Okay. Now, so that's basically the file operation. And the next one we're going to talk about is how the operating system file system going to actually manage the disk block. Because remember, file is going to be actually, if each file going to be actually cut into a block of same size, and then you threw each of the block into the hard disk. And when you read, you're also going to read one block after another. Okay. So now, how operating system, actual file system going to manage these disk blocks? Okay. So here's how. So there's a couple of allocations. Okay. One is called a contiguous block of allocation. Now this is the simplest one, and which is actually the easiest one to understand, because if you have a file, okay, then you write the file into the hard disk, and then you throw the file one block in the location, and the next block in the next location, and next block in the next location, in the contiguous block location. Okay. So this contiguous allocation is the simplest one. Okay. Now, for example, here's the file control block. Okay. So now you have, in the file control block, you have block, okay, information. So this file is stored actually in the hard disk or any actually disk medium. the like a flash drive or hard disk or anything, but the file is stored in the contiguous location. So the first actually location is 14. The next one going to be in 15. Next we're going to be 16 and 17. So now here is the very simple. So there's block 14, 15. Okay, so block 0 is actually in the hard disk 14. Block 1 is in the hard disk 15. 2 is in the hard disk 16. And 3 is in the hard disk 17. So that's pretty simple. Okay. Now, the contiguous allocation is pretty straightforward and also very easy to operate. Okay, so because once you know the first block is in 14, now you actually know the second block, or you even know the third block, right? So the third block is just the 14 plus 3. The third block is 14 plus 3. The second block is 14 plus 2. So you can easily actually, and also direct access becomes possible. If you want to actually access a particular block, as far as you know the first block, you can directly just go to the block you're looking for. Okay, you say, oh, I want to access the 16th block. And the first block in the hard disk is 14. So then 16th block is going to be 14 plus 16. That's block 30 in the hard disk. Not the block index over here, block number here, but actual block number. Okay, so you can easily find it out. So the contiguous allocation is the easiest allocation. So it's very simple in terms of the direct access. Okay. Now, what's the drawback? What's the disadvantage of direct, the contiguous allocation? Now, if I want to expand the file, the currently file F actually used the actual block from 14 to 17. Now, if I want to actually add a contents in the file, so I need one more block. Okay. So in that case, if I use contiguous allocation, so I need to check the block 18, right, in the hard disk. And I find out block 18 is available. That's good. So I add the contents here. So now the file is going to take from 14 to 18, right? And then I want to continue to add a file, and I need to increase the block. So I need to add another block. And then I find out block 19 is not available. So that means I cannot add any more contents in the file. If I want to continue to do this, I need to move the whole file, the whole set of blocks into another location. So now I take from 14 to 18, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 blocks. And then I want to add another block. I need a 6 block. So then I need to find in the hard disk, and there's 6 contiguous free blocks. So in that case, like a 1, 2, 9. Oh, that's a good one. So I need to move the whole things over here. And then I have actually some free blocks afterwards. So then I can actually continue to expand. But once I expand to 9, then I cannot expand anymore. So that's the limitation for the contiguous allocation. Okay. Now, if you think about these with the memory allocation, it's very similar, because for the memory allocation, remember that if you use the contiguous memory location, then you are limited, because you need to find a chunk of memory space for the whole process. If the chunk of memory space is smaller than the file size, the process size, then you cannot allocate the process. Now, same things here. Okay. Now, if your block size, free block size, is smaller than the file size, then you cannot save the file into the hard disk, right? Because you cannot find a chunk of hard disk space which is big enough for the file. Even though the total hard disk space is big enough, but you don't have a contiguous memory hard disk space for the file. So then you cannot save the file. That's a bad thing. So there's an advantage and disadvantage. The next one they use is the linked allocation. Okay. Now the linked allocation is like this. So now I don't have to actually allocate the file in a contiguous block space, in consecutive block space. So all I need to do is, in the file control block, I know the first block length is, okay, or first block is 14. So the block 0 is pointed to 14. So then it's pointed to 14. Now that's the block. Now at the end of this block, I'm actually point to the next block. So it's a 14, 17. And then the 17, actually at the end of 17, I pointed to block 3. And 3, I point to block 9. And the 9 point to block 12. Okay, so that means it's a 14. The first one is stored in block 14. Next one is 17. Next one is 3. Next one is 9. Next one is 12. Now, if I want to add more block for this file, it doesn't matter which block I choose. I can choose this one, right? I can choose, say, oh, block 1 is free. So I can put the block 1. And then point to 12 to block 1. And then I can add like a block 20. So then point to 1 to block 20. So I can continue to expand the disk space, continue to expand the disk space. Okay, not disk space, the file, continue to expand the file. So what's the advantage of this approach?
It makes expanding a file a lot easier.
Okay. And also, as far as the hard disk space have some free block, you can continue to expand, right? You don't care where is the block. So you just put the link at the very end of each block. Okay, so that's the advantage. Now the disadvantage is, there's a lot of disadvantage of this. Okay, the disadvantage is, it's not really efficient. When you search for a particular data in a particular block, it's not really efficient, because you have to start from the very beginning. Okay, because the next block is pointed to by the previous block. So you have to actually start from beginning and then follow the link, and you find the location. Okay, that's the one. And also, to actually write the file or read the file, it's not really efficient, because once you read the file, for example, if you read the data in block 12, and then the next data is going to be in block 1, right? Because 12 is point to 1. So it's, because of the physical limitation, it's actually really slow than the contiguous allocation. It's slow, much slow. So that's why people actually use the some kind of compromise. They try to combine the pros of all these different approach, and create some kind of mixed approach. Okay. Now, in Microsoft, just remember, you can actually use they actually use the linked allocation. And now maybe linked allocation combined with contiguous allocation. It's called indexed or whatever. Now, wherever it's possible, even though with the linked allocation, you still want to make sure, all the actual blocks for the same file gonna be close together. Okay, so that's the reason why after you use the computer system for a long time, you delete the file, you create the file, you delete the file, you create the file, and eventually you're going to create some kind of a scenario, just like a fragmentation scenario. So one thing you're going to do is, what are you going to do? Microsoft provide some kind of administrative tool called defragmentation, right? What the purpose for defragmentation is, just try to actually, relocate each of the blocks. So the same for the blocks associated with the same file should be pushed together. Okay, that's defragmentation, because this is going to actually improve the performance of the computer system. Even though you support a linked allocation, you still want to make sure it's actually things are nearby. So the next approach is called a clustered allocation. The clustered allocation is combines the contiguous allocation and the linked allocation. Okay, so you can actually, if there's a couple of blocks over here, okay, so this is not available, this is not available, this is not available. So you start to store the file over here, and then if the block nearby is free, you can store the next one over here, next one over here. But then the next one is not available, and then you start to looking for some free memory location. Okay, so then I'm going to say, okay, I point to this next one, and then next one here, next one here, next one here, next one here. No, it's not available, and then I point to the next one. So this way, most of the time, I still looking for the try to actually put as close as possible. But if it's impossible, and then I create another cluster. Okay, that's called a clustered allocation. Okay, so I think we're almost there. So we only have a couple of slides left for next time. So, but we are almost done with this. Please, read the Zai book, read the chapter 8 of the Zai book, and then I'm gonna quickly wrap up the chapter 8 and switch to the I/O. Okay. Any questions before I call it a day?
Do you have some time after class? Do you have some time to talk after class?
Hello? Yes.
Do you have some time? I have some questions.
Okay. Let's see. So right now, I have another class next, but can you email me? If it's something you want to share in the class, then you can talk about in the next class. But if it's your personal information, what you want to talk about it yourself, then can you send me an email so we can set up another meeting?
All right.
Okay. So also,
it's just gonna take 2 minutes. I can just wait till everybody leaves.
Okay. Okay. So you can leave over here. So yeah, I think that's fine. Let me turn off the recording.